When walking the street and you see homeless people walking or laying on benches or sidewalks, what is the first thing that comes to your mind? If I was to answer this question, I would wonder why there isn't enough shelters in the United States. I would also wonder though why the government can't fund shelters, and if they do, why aren't there more funded? Today, I will share three things: why the government should provide shelter for the homeless, how can the government provide shelter for the homeless, and what will be the outcome if the government was to provide shelter for the homeless. First, let's look at some of the reasons as to why the government should provide shelter for the homeless. When people see homeless people, they usually think of a person that is either one, an addict, or two, they just don't want to work. However, in most cases, that's not it. That's not everything that homeless people have dealt with or went through. If people would actually care to speak to a homeless person, then they would learn that most of the time they are veterans who have lost their way after serving in the military and been diagnosed with PTSD or some other mental illness. It also could be a woman who just removed herself from a domestic violence relationship and just couldn't take it anymore and knew that it was better out there for her. Or it could be a family that was just down on her luck at the time. If these aren't real reasons as to why the government should provide shelter for the homeless, then they should research the number of how many men and women are homeless throughout the United States. Reading an article written by Robert Collin, I learned that 30,000 men and 6,000 women alone was homeless in New York City. If the number was high back then I can only imagine what the number is now, and not just New York City, but the United States as a whole. Another reason the government should provide shelter is so that the death rates of homeless people will decrease instead of increasing throughout each year. In a year, there are over 1,000 Homeless deaths. They are either known to have died due to hypothermia, or they froze to death due to the low temperatures and the area that they are in or live in aren't prepared for combat cold weather. Now that I've talked about some of the reasons as to why the government should provide shelter for the homeless, let's look at some of the reasons as to how they can provide shelter for the homeless. When researching this topic and watching the news about what's going on today and how much a wall at the border is so important to people, I immediately thought of a better idea as to where they can use all the money that a wall is going to cost. I feel instead of building a wall, why can't the government put the money to better use and build houses and facilities for those of the homeless and that's trying to get back on their feet? Now, of course, they would have to have programs put into place to teach and help those that are homeless to get back on their feet. With that being said, they could use the funds to educate and train those that will be working within these programs and in these facilities. We don't want poorly trained and uneducated people trying to guide a homeless person in the right direction. To me, it'll seem like they'll be going backwards because if that person doesn't have the training or the education for it, then they really can't guide them or tell them which way to go. It will also bring money to help personnel as well, to help pay personnel as well. Though I'm sure that some of these people would would love to volunteer their services just to be able to help those that are in need. Talking with a coworker about how the government can provide service for the homeless, she stated that though we can build facilities, more houses, have more programs for the homeless, they should also have frequent drug tests put into place at these facilities and houses to be able to deal with those that are ex-addicts and to make sure that they're staying clean throughout the process. I understand where she was coming from, and I agree with her as well. The government can also find treatment for those of ex-addicts and wanting to become clean. However, sometimes they don't know how or they don't understand which way to go to be able to do so. So with funds for treatment and stuff like this, then it will be able to help those ex-addicts as well become clean and live a better life. It was also brought to my attention, and I quote, homeless people are people who suffer from mental illness, they're veterans, they're falling on hard times. And these are some of the areas where the government, has failed to help at. Not only should they provide shelter for the homeless, they should also provide or have other resources for them as well. Some of the shelters should be broken up into different groups, such as a place for those that are suffering from mental illness, a place for veterans who are suffering from PTSD or other mental illness or medical conditions after serving in the Army, or the military as a whole, and a place where families can go as well that will have the needs not only for the parents but for the children. Now, I'm not saying that the government or some states don't already have these facilities or these houses or treatment programs. However, I do say that it could be more, that there is a need for more of these facilities, programs, treatments, and stuff like that. So, I have spoken about why and how the government can provide for the homeless. Let's now talk about what the outcome would be if they was to provide more for the homeless. One outcome would be that they will have more productive people in the United States, more people willing to work, more people willing to get ahead in life. Another outcome would be that the death rates will decrease each year, and it will also allow who have suffered from being homeless to feel as if they have much more to live for. Also, the suicide, homicide rates, I believe, will go down as well. It will also allow unemployment rates to go up and for more jobs to be created. There are many positive and some negative outcomes. The most outcome of it all will allow people in the United States to see that the government cares more about their people than what their people think they do. There is a quote by Tom Cody that stood out to me. Cody said, "The homeless problem needs to be addressed." This is so true in so many ways, and we as the people can make this happen. I have explained to you as to why the government should provide for the homeless, such as the government could provide more funding for more buildings and facilities instead of building a wall. And the outcome would be which is unemployment rates can go down, more jobs can be created. How can they? Um, how can they do it? Oh, as to why they should do it, it will allow death rates to decrease. If I can answer the question as to why there should be and what can be done to help homeless people, then surely you can answer the question as well, or have more questions about it. If I can tell you anything today on top of what I've already told you, I would say that homeless people don't deserve your pity. However, they do deserve your help.